Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? Because it's time to put them on. Because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You at the location. You're at the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. And today we have Heather Asiyanbi.
Good job.
You know what? She's the editor of children's books. Now, we've had a lot of editors on there. And I want to talk to her about her experience because I take that back. I did write a very successful children's book, but it was for ages between 9 and 13, and it was a workbook. But, I thought about writing a children's book for maybe 3 or 4-year-olds. That can be tough. You got to make it rhyme. You got to make it interesting. You got to have good illustration. So we're going to ask about that. And then how do you edit, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish? How do you edit something like that? So Brains, help me welcome her to the edge, Heather Asiyanbi.
Asiyanbi.
Asiyanbi. I almost had it. I almost had 100 points.
That's okay.
All right. Thank you so much, baby, and welcome to the edge. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. It's so nice to be here and finally with you. I know we talked months ago and your schedule is packed, ma'am. So
I know,
I'm excited.
What? I'm always going to make room for some brains. That's right. I like that patch of purple. What's that saying to me? What's that saying?
So I was actually just kind of bored, right? And I was trying to figure out what color would go decently. And so purple was it. I tried blue and blue was okay, but I like the purple better. And then I started watching, the TikTok started getting more popular and I've been spending way too much time on TikTok. And I've noticed that a lot of Gen X women now have purple hair. I don't know if it was like something floating through the air that hit all of our brains or something, but
I don't know. Did I do purple? I think I got a wig.
Okay.
I call them hair options with some
hair
purple,
options. I like that.
And then you remember Kelly Osbourne a few years ago? She turned people on to gray. I mean, people were falling out about the gray haircut.
That can be very beautiful, right? But I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm not ready to go there yet. So
I can tell that you are whimsical, that you're fun. How did you become an editor for children's books?
It was kind of accidental, honestly. I spent the most of my career in journalism, marketing, and public relations. Sometimes all at the same time, depending on like what my day job was and what my freelance gig was doing. And then in the summer of 2020, when everybody was locked down and stuck in the house forever, I was working in the marketing department of a law firm. And I honestly used to wake up every morning and be like, dear God, please don't let the law firm exist anymore. And please don't let the law firm exist anymore.
Oh,
and
wow.
Of course, it still was there. So a couple of friends told me, you know what, you've been talking about starting a business for a really long time and you have wanted to get out of writing. You really like doing editing. Just get it done. And so I did. And the first children's books I edited were from this. So her name is Shelley Karen, and her books are on Amazon. Her books actually do rhyme. And rhyming to me is an amazing skill. I am blown away by authors who can rhyme because I do not possess that skill. It would be very sad if I tried. And at the time, and this is what I think makes her even more incredible, is that she didn't own a computer, so she wrote her books on her phone.
Oh my goodness.
I know. So she's writing rhymes, like rhyming couplets on her phone, which is incredible. So I just kind of fell into it, but I really love it. Like, I really love it. And the reason why is, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that the way self-publishing and indie publishing has come about has really opened the floodgates for representation in children's literature, which was severely lacking before. When you have these great publishing houses as the gatekeepers to what books end up on shelves. They're really kind of dictating what we can read and what we can't read, right? Like, and what we read to our children and what our children learn to read. So by opening this up, this market up through Indian self-publishing, all these authors who have really great ideas for stories, who probably would have been ignored by traditional publishing houses, now get their books out there. So I work predominantly with indie authors and indie publishers, just a lot for that reason. But number two, I also love it because there seems to be no shortage of story ideas and the way that the stories are being told, which I think is amazing. I work with a woman who, and I don't know that her backstory really counts towards like her stories, but it's just interesting to me that she spends half her time in the US and half her time in Ireland. And then she writes on the plane going back and forth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And her story,
it's a beautiful thing because, again, creativity.
Yeah.
And you know, one of my favorite books, kind of written in a childlike manner. What is it? What is the name of it? Who Moves My Cheese? Have you ever read that business book?
Oh yeah, yep. The Who Moved My Cheese story with the mice in the maze, and it's really more business.
The maze. And you know, I'm saying that they took the most simplistic premise and turned it into a business model masterpiece.
Yeah, for sure.
I encourage writers, you know, not even with the children's books, because you have to have a certain kind of creativity to keep their attention.
Yeah.
Short and sweet, a lot of colorful pictures, but you can really build the vocabulary. You need to change your voice brains when you read to the children. You have to get into character. Children will remember that 5 or 10 minutes as they sat in your lap every day, every week, and learned how to read.
Yeah, well, and children who experience reading before they go to kindergarten, their vocabulary is like, what I read a statistic, like 3 to 5 times greater than children who are not read to on a daily basis. So, you know, if you think about that and you think about how powerful words and language are in that sense, you know, then the editing gains even deeper significance. You know, and then there, of course, there is a huge difference in how like a made-up story, a fiction story for children is edited than something that's, you know, trying to teach kids about money, right? Like one penny plus one.
So go into that for a minute.
Okay.
What kind of, you know, what would be the quirks and twerks in editing for a children's book?
So the premises are the same in many respects as they are to editing an adult book. If it's a fiction story, it needs the same type of trajectory that an adult story takes. It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. There needs to be a conflict and a resolution. Now, because we're dealing with children's literature, and I'm talking, you know, like you were saying earlier, for young readers, right? Like maybe 3 to 6 years old. These are kids who are being read to by their parents and then perhaps reading to their parents the same books that had been read to them, right? So the books are the same, but they still need to contain these elements, but they're simpler. So maybe there's a child who has a teddy bear, and the story is told from the teddy bear standpoint. This teddy bear is lonely when the child goes to school every day, and maybe during the day the teddy bear comes to life, right? Like this.
Oh boy,
theme, right?
Getting good.
Well, you know, like when kids go, like their stuffed animals have a life, right? They have an inner dialogue. They are fully realized characters. They have motivation.
Look at how much money Toy Story made.
Okay, right. Great point, right? So but in a picture book, you're talking about like what, 10 to 16 pages tops, right? So how do you encapsulate a full story trajectory where we're in the beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, and somewhere in there is a conflict and a resolution, but we understand who these characters are from the very beginning. without needing a lot of exposition, right? So, the bear is happy when her person is there. The bear is sad when their person goes to school. While the person is at school, what is the conflict and resolution for the bear that has to happen and get resolved? Maybe they knock over a teacup, or they pick up a pen and make a mark on the table, or something, right? Like they have to figure out how to solve that problem.
Right.
And then the total resolution comes the end, when their person comes home, when their child comes home and picks them up and hugs them again, because the child is happy to see their bear, right? So the story elements are no less important in a children's book than they are in an adult fiction book.
Mm-hmm.
They're just boiled down to a much simpler level, but that doesn't mean it's any less rich.
That's very rich information. That makes me want to write a children's book. That was, I mean, really, that was 5 amazing takeaways: a beginning, a middle, an end, a conflict, and a resolution.
Yeah. You have to have those, and the characters have to be fully realized, right?
Right.
So,
right.
I always say, when I'm talking with a children's author and I say, do you have an illustrator yet? It's one of the first questions I ask. And they say, oh no, I haven't really even considered it, and I say, okay, well, here's what you need to know when you're writing. If you haven't started writing your book, here's what you need to know when you're going into it. Your characters, you have to know exactly what they look like. What are they wearing? What is if it's set in school, what does school look like? What is the classroom made up of? Is it a diverse classroom? Is it not? Is it a brick building? Do they do class outside? Where is it taking place? Everything has to be fully realized in your mind so that you can provide the description that the illustrator will follow to create the images that tell the majority of your story. Because when you're dealing with young readers, the illustrations do the heavy lifting.
They do. They do. Because you know how the teacher used to always hold the book a certain kind of way, and
what do you think is
side,
right? Or they'll say, well, Jack is standing at the bottom of the beanstalk. What do you think Jack is thinking?
Right.
Do you think Jack is going to climb the beans? Right? They ask.
And all of that is a part of the comprehension and learning how to understand the story.
Exactly.
I grew up with a little bit of dyslexia, so I couldn't hear the but da. It was a challenge for me to get spelling sometimes, because I would transpose my letters. A lot of times parents cannot recognize the signs. Children can be very disruptive in the classroom because they could have a reading challenge. Other kids are reading faster, they're stronger. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And to your point, remember when we were in school, we had a nurse who would do eye exams, right? We would get Miss Johnson's 2nd grade class on Tuesday we'd all go get our eyes checked.
Yeah.
And then that allowed certain vision issues to get caught ahead of time. I've been wearing glasses since I was in 2nd grade because I couldn't see the blackboard. Now, had we not had that vision testing in school, who knows when that would have been discovered, right?
My daughter, this is what she told me when she needed glasses. She says, Mommy, sometimes in the classroom, I feel like that little Tweety bird that always circles around when the cat gets hit in the head.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I said, my God, my baby's vision is bad, or maybe she's dizzy.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Headaches.
Yeah.
Get headaches from bad vision. Yes, absolutely.
So it can be a struggle. So now, what is some of the fun things that, children's authors are writing about? Are they writing about environmental issues? Are they writing about anti-bullying? Are they writing about, relationships? What do you find is, pretty popular?
The answer to all of that is yes. The answer to all of that is yes. And that is the beauty of the children's literature market now. You have board books, for 2-year-old, 2 to 4-year-olds that are talking about the different kinds of families that exist. You have,
Oh yeah,
um,
right,
you
right.
know,
Because it's different now, and
correct.
it's
It's
more,
not just a mom and a dad.
no, and it's socially acceptable. So we have to educate our children so that
Mhm.
when they go to school, they'll be able to have that conversation as to why they have two mommies or they have, two daddies.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. And a lot of what we're seeing too is authors who are writing about multi-generational living, right? So they live there, their parents live there, and their grandparents live there, right? So they have
Mm,
more than one generation under the roof. And a lot of times we find that to in families who have ancestral ties or ancestral roots in Latin American and Caribbean and countries, as well as African countries, right?
right.
So there's a whole different way that Europeans and white Americans live than the rest of the world. And so, so those stories are being told. We also see a lot of um, children of every skin tone under the sun is now represented, but so are varying degrees of ability. So we have,
That's what I was going to talk about, and that
yeah,
is really a beautiful thing.
it's beautiful.
Writing about, children that might be in a wheelchair or that have autism or,
Or hearing, or they're hearing impaired, or they have vision impairments,
right.
or they were born perhaps with a condition that's not visible. Like if you see this child on a playground, you might not know that they have an issue, only
Hmm.
to come to find out they're like a friend of mine's daughter has sickle cell, right? But you look at her, you would never know.
Right.
You would
Right,
never
right,
know.
right, right.
But that's a very real issue that's
That's
being dealt
beautiful.
with.
That's
You
beautiful.
know,
And, children's literature is not cheap.
no, it's not.
And, and that's one thing. Parents will buy a children's book, and you better believe that they put it on the shelf. Don't get a marker and write in the book. That's not what we do. We protect and honor literature.
Yeah,
You know what
I'm
I used to love too? I used to love this right here. When you would have the audio version and the book, it would help you go along and you'd hear the
mhm.
little ding. It's time to turn the
Turn
page.
the page.
It was all, and then also, what is that? Reading Rabbit, the
Yeah,
magazine that used to come out in
yeah.
school. I'm really hoping that parents encourage their children to read more. It is
Mhm.
such a gift. It will transport you. It will open your creativity. It'll open your mind. And it's a way of telling stories.
Yeah.
If you have something that's going on with you, if you're being bullied, if you're, trying to
Mhm.
find out your sexual identity, if you are,
What if you're transracially adopted, right? Like
right,
coming to terms with that, like trying to figure out, why do I not look like my parents? My friends all look like their parents. Why don't I look like my parents? Or,
mm,
a theme too is when children become siblings for the first time, right?
right, right,
Whether through that's birth or adoption, foster care, whatever it is, like all of these stories are now out in the world, which is making it's just it's it goes back to what you said, right? When you open a book, you can travel the world without ever leaving home, right? It
absolutely,
opens your imagination.
right.
You're seeing all of these things in different ways. You're meeting people that you never would have otherwise had the opportunity to meet, and it's all because you opened a book. And one of the things that, like you said about respecting literature, I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm like the bookshelf for them is crazy full.
Oh yeah,
But
oh yeah,
I'm
and they love it,
right,
and
and
they'll
I
go
just keep
back.
adding more. I just keep adding
I
more.
can go over to my bookshelf right now and find some books that I had. Again, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. I don't care what you say. Dr. Seuss was the best.
Yes,
I
he
loved
absolutely was.
I loved Peanuts. You know,
Yeah.
because the cartoon,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
made you kind of learn to follow a theme or
Yeah.
follow a story or a script. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of great writers now.
Hmm.
If you weren't a proof and pen editor, what would you be?
Oh, phew. um, I wanted to be a surgeon when I was growing up, but I am good at math, but it's not something I like to do. And so like going into chemistry and physics and all that, like I was like, oh no. But the human body is an amazing machine. And I love I really enjoyed learning more about that. But if I was not editing, I I don't know. I see. I think I've always done something with writing, right? Like I've always been in the writing space. I've always been in an
Have you
editing.
ever written a children's book yourself?
No, I have not. But my my cat has his own TikTok channel, and I was recently told
Wow.
by a children's book author, that he needs to have his own book series because, and I quote, he is a trip. So,
Well, maybe he's a trip that's worth the gas, something to look into. So you mentioned TikTok a couple times. You know, TikTok is a beast within itself.
yes,
And I was talking to my granddaughters, and they said, you know what, Nona, we only want information in bite-sized pieces.
yeah.
We don't want a whole lot. And they will be on that cotton picking TikTok to the point where I have to take it away.
Oh, you should be in my house to take mine away. Truly, it's easy to get lost in.
How? Why? Well, how do you find it so fascinating?
So, like any algorithm for the social media channels, they can measure where you spend your time. So if on this video I only spend a second, but on this video I spend 15 seconds, they're going to serve more of the video that I spend more time with. I'm amazed at the creativity of people and what they come up with for like what they focus on TikTok. So there's this one woman, she's just a storyteller, but they're not her stories. People send them to her,
Oh,
and
wow.
then she tells them, which I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting. I come across this woman, and I had never encountered her before. She does tarot card readings, and and she has this like really calming voice where it, you know, you're like just feel instantly like,
Right.
you
Calm.
know, when you're listening to her. And then there's just people who are hilarious.
Yeah, they're funny. They do parody of songs and
Yeah.
movies and skits, and you know, you have a little bit of everything. And it turned political. It turned as social activists. I mean, some of the things that they did in that last administration, how they rallied together to the point where they wanted to shut down TikTok is amazing.
It is amazing. And I think too that in a lot of time, you know, social media gets a bum rap for good reason in a lot of times. But what I think is not utilized enough or not recognized enough is that we can reach people. You know, we can you can use a TikTok channel to tell your children's story, right? You can hold up your book and you can read it aloud to people, you know, and for some people that might be enough. For other people, they're going to say, I need that book on my bookshelf for my child, for my grandchild. How do I get it? Where can I buy your book? You know, they're going to.
TikTok still limited to like, you know, a minute or 2 minutes, or you can just really.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Some of them I have seen that are longer. I think they allow up to 10 minutes on some cases, but I'm not really sure how they decide that.
All right, let's ask some more fun questions.
Okay.
If you were an appliance in the kitchen, what appliance would you be?
The coffee maker.
Why?
Because I don't do caffeine. But coffee for me, I enjoy the taste of coffee, and coffee is part of a morning ritual that kind of allows you to take a breath before you dig into the day.
Absolutely. I agree. I'd be the refrigerator.
Okay, why?
I just want to chill.
I like it.
If you were a flower in the garden, what flower would you be?
A peony.
Oh yes, they're pretty. I love them.
They're beautiful.
I'd be a gladiola.
Okay. I like the peonies because they're big and showy, but only for like a brief amount of time, right? Like you have to appreciate them when they're blooming, and then they're gone. And yet they leave behind this beautiful green bush, that provides, this nice beauty in the warmer weather. Where I live, we only get like 4.5 months of nice weather a year. So like, we
Okay,
have
now where are you at again?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Is the cheese really good in Wisconsin?
Girl, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Really?
You're in California, right?
I'm in California.
Okay, so I'm just going to put it out there. Controversial, I know. But all those commercials I see about California has happier cows and y'all just make better cheese, lies.
Really?
All lies. There's nothing.
So what
like
is good about your cheese? Is it sharp? Is it robust? Is it creamy? What's unique about Wisconsin cheese?
Well, it really depends on what kind you want. Do you want a sharp cheddar? We've probably got 50 varieties at one store.
Wow.
And then you go to another store, there's going to be another 50 varieties, right? But we have, Wisconsin has just been built on a couple of industries that really are embedded in the culture of the state, no matter where you live. I live in Milwaukee, which is very urban, it's a metropolitan area. But even here, though, I have friends who have moved out of Wisconsin, and they'll see like cheese curds. Fried cheese curds are a big thing here, and they'll see fried cheese curds on a menu in another state. And
now, what is a fried cheese curd? It's like a fried cheese ball.
Ma'am, let me tell you, yes. Except,
she had to bring it all together, okay?
Let me tell you, okay. Cheese curds are a culinary delight. You can eat them without being fried, and they're just the cheese. And if they're squeaky against your teeth, then that's better. But if you bread them and then you fry them, it is like 19 million times more delicious. And then you dip them in ranch dressing, of course.
Okay. So, just to kind of create a parallel, it's kind of like a mozzarella stick, but better.
Way better.
No?
And
way
smaller, because you can just pop them in your mouth.
Oh, God. All right.
Yeah.
So, now, what if you have a child that's interested in writing a book? How would you coach them? You've given us the top 5, beginning, middle, end, conflict, resolution. What other 1 or 2 tips would you give to a child? Because there's a lot of children's authors out there.
The same advice applies. It doesn't matter who you are, what book you're writing.
Okay.
It literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. I'm hopefully going to be working with a young lady who wrote her first book when she was 12. And we're working through it right now. It needs some development, and that's what the editor is for, right? Is to try to parse it out and be like, okay, what's our plot? What's our trajectory? What is everybody doing? And there's no difference when you're coming with a child who's writing a children's book. If my granddaughter said, I want to write a book about flowers growing in the garden, I'd say, okay, who's planting the flowers? Are there humans in the story? If there's no humans in the story, what kind of flowers are they? Do they have names? Like where do they live? What kind of garden? Are they in a garden, or they live in the wild? Like, are they dandelions growing in a meadow? Like, where do they live? What are they doing?
Well, you're much more, than a pen and proof editor. You're really a book coach.
Yeah.
Because you're giving a lot more content. You're not just, again, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. You're actually giving the cradle to grave service, walking people through the entire process so that they win. So after the editor finishes it, and I tell people all the time, pay for an editor. Say it again. Pay for an editor. You can't go wrong. It's one thing to read the story, have the story in your mind, even do it audibly. But when you're in print, it has to have a certain format for people, number one, to take you seriously, for them to talk about it, for them to enjoy it. So it's very, very important that you have an editor to make sure that the words are spelled correctly. You read something in your mind 100 times, and it's automatically fact based upon your perception. But we get it in front of somebody like Heather, and she red pens it. And also no brains that the red pen is your friend. It makes things better. It's not to criticize you or to dumb you down. It is actually your friend. Wouldn't you agree, Heather?
I do. And So when I'm editing a book, and it doesn't matter if it's a children's book author or an adult nonfiction author, my approach is the same. I take care of the technical things: spelling, grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, all of that sort of thing, right? That's all the technical stuff. But I also come at it from the viewpoint of a reader. I've been reading, I don't know, forever, since I was very, very small. I love to read. I still love to read. I have a pile of books next to my bed. And then my grandkids have piles of books in my house. So I also come at it from the viewpoint of a reader. Does the plot make sense? Did you finish your thoughts? Does the dialogue go with the person or the character who's speaking the words? So it's a mix of both technical and then from the standpoint of a reader. I've also, been a reporter forever, a news reporter. So I'm like super nosy. So I ask a lot of questions. So if like something doesn't quite fit, or if it seems incomplete, or I feel like it might fit better in a different location, I'm going to make that suggestion. I'm going to make a comment. I'll ask a question. My goal is to make sure your story is absolutely the best, most well-rounded story that we can make it. And to your point about an editor, most people, there's a lot of education that needs to be done with indie authors and publishers sometimes too. Editing rather is both the most expensive and the most important step in a publishing journey.
Absolutely.
Because when you, as a consumer, when you spend your money on anything, you expect it to be the best for the money that you're spending. And books are no different. You always have to think of your end user throughout your process. So if your end user is spending their money on your book, they expect to get the best product possible in their hands. And best possible means as error-free as possible. So we're all human. We can't catch everything. Even President and Mrs. Obama had errors in their books, right? Because people are doing
it. You cracked me up when you told me that. You found,
real.
And I just went through it.
I was like, but they're there. They're there. And it's because we're people, right? And nothing is perfect. Anything we do is never going to be 100% perfect. But what we're going to do, as if you were writing and I was your editor, our collaboration, we are a partnership. And our goal is to move your book from, whether you've written it or not is irrelevant, from start to finish, and end with the most perfect book possible at the end. And we will know that we're there when every question has been answered, every comment has been resolved, and every suggestion has either been integrated or rejected, right? So once we have solved all those issues and we don't have any more notes in the margin, we're done. And you can feel confident, like really confident, that you can then take your book to formatting and into publishing, and you don't have any worries that way, right? Because everybody needs a second set of eyes. I need a second set of eyes all the time. And
it's, again, like you said, when people look at you in print, it's a very different experience than when they hear you audibly. Well, Heather, you have been a wealth of information. I am going to run a complete series on editors. I have editors from a spiritual perspective. I have editors that are technical editors for, they have to be super smart because they got to break down technical terms into layman's terms. We've got, you, beautiful soul, that are working with people to entertain and educate and elevate children. And I appreciate, you really kind of picking that genre. I see you just light up when you talk about it.
Did you? I love it.
You gave us were amazing. Brains, remember, you have to have a beginning, a middle, an end, a conflict, and a resolution. Yes. That's much like life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell my brains how to get in contact with you, Heather.
So you can visit my website, which is Pens and Proof. So PENS and spelled out and proof, PROOF.com. Or you can email me at heather@pensandproof.com.
Brains, pick up a pen and paper. Go back and refer to your old journals. I did that. I found my old diaries when I was a young girl. Some of my favorite books. Literacy is it's a lost art. Being able to connect with your kids instead of putting them in front of the device. I'm telling you, that little 15-minute, 20 minutes at the end of the day, reading the book, snuggling up, transporting yourself to outer space will do so much for your relationship, your psyche, and your imagination. Thank you so much, Heather. Come back and visit us on The Edge. I want to hear your book. I want to hear the book about you and the cat.
Sir Walter Payton, his royal fatness.
That's I'm already ready for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.